How did Thrawn defeat Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo? In 1815, Napoleon had returned to power as the Emperor of France against all the odds. The master of Europe was back, but the previously victorious Allies had other plans. The combined forces of Spain, Britain, Russia, Prussia, Sweden and Austria declared war on Napoleon. Not France, just Napoleon, and sent their armies to deliver the final blow to Napoleon's dreams of empire. Napoleon knew his only chance was to take on each army separately in a 1v1, so he first set his sights north to the British. But the Allies had an ace up their sleeve. After recent communications with the Galactic Empire, King George III and Emperor Palpatine signed the Treaty of Malastare in late 1814. This treaty guaranteed that the Empire would assist in the fight against Napoleon. Unfortunately for Napoleon, the Imperials would send their most capable commander, Grand Admiral Thrawn. A calculating tactician and cunning strategist, Napoleon was about to meet his match. But there was a problem. The French armies were gaining on the British, fast. The Imperials had to race south to stop the British being destroyed. Thrawn promised the British commander, the Duke of Wellington, that he would come to his aid if he could hold off Napoleon for long enough. On Sunday the 18th of June 1815, Napoleon and his army would meet the British and Allied armies near the small village of Waterloo. Wellington had picked his defensive position well upon the high ground. Napoleon knew his artillery would get bogged down in the mud, and so sent up the infantry. The battle-hardened ranks of the French infantry steamroll through the wall of British muskets. The rest of Wellington's line can see the French break through and are routed. Napoleon, seeing the red tunics running away, must have felt victorious. But he didn't count on the wild card. He was certain that the Treaty of Malastare was purely Allied propaganda, but his jaw dropped when his right flank became engulfed by a blast of fire. The shimmer of white stormtrooper armour and the roar of the AT-AT's heavy cannons. It was clear for all to see Thrawn had arrived on the European battlefields. The British retreat was a feign, a sham. The Allies turned 180, charging back down the hill. The French ranks were in disarray, and seeing the lines being cut down by overwhelming Imperial blaster fire, Napoleon surrendered. This defeat of the French armies would signify the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon would be exiled to the isolated island of St. Helena and would die 6 years later. But it was clear to all that Grand Admiral Thrawn had delivered the final blow to Napoleon's dream of world conquest. He would certainly go down in history as the greatest tactical mind of the age. Did Jango Fett shoot Franz Ferdinand? Jango Fett was born in 66 BBY on Concord Dawn, a world within the Mandalore sector of the Outer Rim territories. Although he is most known for being an elite bounty hunter who is used as a genetic template for the Republic's clone army, many don't know of his hardline nationalist loyalties to the Kingdom of Serbia. As a young man, he had frequently travelled to the nation, and even though he was not a Serb, he and many of his countrymen supported them as they hated the expansive Austro-Hungarian Empire. Because of the threat of Austria on their doorstep, and an inability to take Bosnia back from them, Serbia aligned itself with Tsarist Russia as well as Mandalore. A young Jango felt very frustrated at how Bosnia, who he respected as fellow Slavs, had been occupied by Austria. Because of this, Jango and fellow Serb nationalists, including Kabrinovic, hatched a plan to kill the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. After learning that the Archduke was visiting Sarajevo on the 28th of June, and that his car's route was published in a newspaper, the group knew they had a chance. Armed with 6 bombs, 4 pistols each, the total of 6 Bosnians and Jango Fett arrived in Sarajevo. Each assassin was poised along a predetermined route that the Archduke would take. The first 2 men would lose their nerve, but a young 19-year-old Kabrinovic threw his bomb. However, it missed its mark, and instead hit the car behind, injuring around 20 people. However, this is not where our story ends. The Archduke had wanted to visit the injured in hospital, changing the car's route. This, however, was not communicated to the Archduke's driver, and so he continued on the original route. After hearing that the attack had failed, Jango was eating a sandwich outside Dexter Jester's diner. when the Archduke's car pulled up right outside the diner. Unveiling his Westar 34 blaster pistol, he shot the Archduke at point-blank range. Unlike the others, Django would escape in his ship Slave 1, which is hidden in a nearby Veliki Park. Only 5 weeks later, Europe would be at war, and the course of history and lives of hundreds of millions would be changed, all because of an angry Mando-Serb nationalist. Did the Empire fight in World War I? In 1914, following the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, Europe was once again at war. Britain would declare war following the German invasion of Belgium, violating its neutrality. But many do not know that Britain was not the only country to declare war because of this action. The Galactic Empire would declare a state of war upon Germany on the 9th of August 1914. It is commonly believed that this was a strategic move by Emperor Palpatine to gain favour with the great powers of Europe. The Empire would deploy an expeditionary force of 34,000 troops from the Imperial Army with an attached 6 brigades of the recently battle-hardened Stormtrooper Corps. The divisions would arrive in France in October 1916 and were immediately deployed along the immense trench lines near the River Somme in preparation for the upcoming attack. The first troops would go over the top on the first day of the Battle of the Somme, on the 1st of July 1916. Over the rest of the campaign, only small amounts of territory would be taken from the Germans. The high casualties were most evident within the British forces, with nearly 20,000 fatalities on the first day alone. This would become the bloodiest day in British military history. The Imperials would fare much better, with 1,800 fatalities according to official Imperial reports. However, public opinion was changing. The citizens of the core world did not want foreign intervention if it meant such a high cost in such a short period of time. So due to mounting public pressure and an inability of the Imperial High Command in battle, the Imperial Army and Stormtrooper Corps were called back home in late summer 1916. The mark of the Imperials on European history is rarely reported, but without the sacrifices of the Imperial Army and Stormtrooper Corps, Europe may look very different today. On the 10th of May 1941, the Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess flew from Germany to Oleron to meet Bail Organa of the Imperial Senate to allow the Empire to mediate peace talks between Nazi Germany and Great Britain. Due to Hess's ship not being able to carry enough fuel for the long journey, he was granted access on the ship Tantive 4 as it was on a diplomatic mission to Oleron. Unknown to Hess, Bail Organa was a leader of the Rebel Alliance, and the Tantive 4 was being used to receive the Death Star plans following the rebel raid on the Imperial-controlled planet of Scarif. After overhearing the captain of the ship, Hess believed that the plans of the superweapon would be very beneficial to the German war effort. Subsequently, after locating the command console of the ship, he transferred a copy of the plans onto a spare holodisk and found his way to the escape pods. Historians have speculated over what happened after Hess ejected the escape pod from the ship. Some believe he escaped to the nearby planet of Tatooine. There is evidence to back up this theory, as Luftwaffe boots were found in the bar of Freetown. However, the most widely accepted theory is that his pod was either destroyed by a Star Destroyer advancing upon the rebel ship, or that Hess was captured by the Imperials and spent the rest of his life and the war in an Imperial-controlled prison on Dathomir. Did the Republic send the clone army to help Nazi Germany in the Battle of Berlin? After the collapse of the Jedi, Emperor Palpatine looked for ways to move away from the cloning process, as they were too costly and would be a potential threat to his power. As the Red Army pushed forwards towards the German heartland, Major Felix Steiner sent a distress signal into the cosmos for one last-ditch effort to rally support for the crumbling Nazi regime. After receiving the distress signal, clone intelligence relayed the message to Emperor Palpatine. After hearing it, he ordered the battle-hardened clone troopers of the GAR to prepare for battle in Europe. The Venators and Acclimators deployed a total of 16 battalions of the GAR, including tanks, infantry, and aircraft. Upon entering the system, the clones landed in the ground of the Reichstag to strengthen the German divisions. The Allied armies proved no match for the veteran clone troopers. However, after learning of nuclear weapons developed by the Allies, the order was given to remove all clones from combat in Europe. Following the retreat of the Republic, Nazi Germany could not hold off the Allied advance, leading to the capture of Berlin on the 2nd of May, 1945. Following the end of the war, Nazi leaders and war criminals were put on trial at Nuremberg. On that list was a man called Chief Palpatine. Years later, it is speculated he escaped to Argentina. What was General Hux doing from 1939 to 1945? Armitage Hux was born in 0 ABY around the time of the Battle of Yavin. Born as an illegitimate child to an Imperial commander, he is often mocked because of his background. Nonetheless, he was destined to become a commander like his father. Such was the corrupt staffing of the Imperial Army. However, during his school years, the bullying became worse and more violent. This isolated the young Hux. He turned to his love of art, and became dependent on it to keep his sanity. After the death of his father, he was able to apply to the Naboo School of Arts, but he was rejected. Returning to Coruscant penniless and destitute, but full of rage and nowhere to direct it, he attended a local NSDAP beer hall meeting. It was here that he found his calling, his messiah, a man who was unknown on the stage of national politics, a certain Hitler. Meeting with Hitler after the speech, they got talking, and to Hux's surprise, Adolf took pity on the young man. Maybe he saw himself in him. Offering him a commission in the newly created SA, the NSDAP's paramilitary wing. Over the following years, as the party grew in popularity and members, Hux climbed the ranks, eventually becoming an Obergruppenführer in the SS. As Germany marched into Austria, Hux was sent to oversee a deportation of non-Aryan groups. As the German war machine ravaged Czechoslovakia, Poland, Belgium, Holland and France, Hux was at the front, executing the Führer's orders. However, following the failure of Barbarossa, the landing of Allied forces in Normandy, Italy and southern France, Germany was surrounded, and in April 1945, the Red Army were at the gates of Berlin. Fearing for his life, he reached out to old contacts within the Empire. He received a reply from an unknown source. It stated, April 28th, Reich Chancellery, transport to the unknown regions. Hearing of his expertise as both a command and staff officer within the Third Reich, the newly formed First Order recruited Hux as they were looking for skilled soldiers to fill the ranks. Arriving at an unknown location, Hux was trained with modern equipment, much different to the old Imperial technology that he was familiar with. He would go on to defeat the New Republic and Resistance at several key battles over the following years, leading the First Order to ever greater victories. Once Starkiller Base was ready to unleash a striking blow against the New Republic, Hux gave one of the most iconic speeches of the post-Imperial age. Today is the end of the Republic. The end of a regime that acquiesces to disorder. At this very moment, in a system far from here, the New Republic lies to the galaxy, while secretly supporting the treachery of the loathsome Resistance. This fierce machine which you have built, upon which we stand, will bring an end to the Senate, to their cherished fleet. All remaining systems will bow to the First Order. And we'll remember this as the last day of the Republic. However, following the Battle of Crate, he became ideologically separated from Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, leading to him rethinking what he'd done over his life. From joining the Nazi Party to abandoning the remnants of a shattered Third Reich and his messiah, to joining the First Order and facilitating the slaughter of millions. With the last minute of re-evaluation of his choices, Hux leaked information to the Resistance, ultimately allowing them to defeat the Final Order's fleet at the infamous Battle of Exegol. Hux would be killed by General Pride, allowing him to die with at least some sense of redemption. Was Cassian Andor a Soviet spy? Andor was born around 33 BBY on the planet Canary. Notable for one of the largest Alliance operations ever mounted. To find and return Galen Erso to Rebel Alliance for questioning on a superweapon he was designing for the Empire. However, most do not know of Andor's other missions. One in particular has been classified for over 70 years. In 2 BBY, the Rebel Alliance was working closely with the Soviet Union to try to combat the Imperial Axis coalition that had been pushed back into Central Europe. Although the Alliance and the Soviets were allies with the United States, there was a great degree of distrust and secrecy between the superpowers. They may have had a common enemy, but not a common vision of the post-war world. The Soviets were aware of a top-secret weapon being developed in the United States, codenamed Project Y, the Manhattan Project. The rebels saw the great potential this weapon could have in their fight against the Empire. They asked the Soviets for any information they may have on the project. The response, however, was limited. It was clear to the Alliance that even the Soviets were being secretive, and so they dispatched Captain Cassian Andor of Rebel Intelligence to evaluate the effectiveness of this mysterious weapon of mass destruction and to gather information relating to its development and its effects. Andor's brief was to infiltrate the Manhattan Project under the alias of Klaus Modin, callsign 787. He was to report all findings to the Alliance Consulate in New York. He operated in the United States from the 28th of February 1943 and worked closely with the US communist spy Julius Rosenberg, even though it is not a sanctioned arrangement, as Andor was forbidden to reveal his true identity to anyone, even the Soviets. His work in espionage continued until on the 2nd of May 1945, when he was recalled to Yavin 4. The reason for the rebellion's swift exit from the European theatre is not known, but the main theory is that when the Red Army was at the gates of Berlin, the Imperials abandoned the fight, and left the Germans to face the Soviet onslaught alone. It is thought the Alliance saw no reason to combat this small remaining amount of Imperials on Earth and pulled all military resources. The United States successfully tested the first atomic bomb on the 16th of July in New Mexico, and would drop 2 more atomic bombs on Japan on the 6th of August and the 9th of August 1945. These attacks would signify the end of the Second World War. They would conduct 5 more tests before the Soviets developed their first atomic bomb, and tested it on the 29th of August 1949. Maybe this would have happened faster if the Rebel Alliance had provided intelligence to the Soviets of their findings. It can safely be said that the Alliance never developed any nuclear weapons of their own, but to this day it has never been revealed how much intelligence was gathered by rebel spies in the United States. Andor was never publicly awarded for his espionage in the United States, but only months later he was recalled to Yavin 4, where he would be briefed on a new mission, one that would begin the path to an eradication of tyranny in the galaxy, but also his life. A weapon much deadlier and more powerful than anything ever known, the Death Star. You are probably familiar with the 1991 invasion of Iraq, an operation to free the small oil-producing Gulf nation of Kuwait from the grips of Saddam Hussein's Iraqi dictatorship. The 1991 invasion is often overshadowed by the much larger 2003 invasion. Because of this, many details are overlooked. One such detail was the involvement of the Galactic Imperial forces. Although their involvement in the conflict was small, it was certainly not a token force. The outfit consisted of 3 battalions of the elite Stormtrooper Corps, under the command of TK-28787, a veteran of the Clone Wars. One may question the Empire's motive to fight alongside the United Nations. It is thought the main reasons was to bargain for the rights to oil deposits in occupied Iraq, to supply its newly growing fleet of Star Destroyers. On the 24th of February 1991, after weeks of air attack and bombing, the US and Imperial-led coalition streamed armoured infantry into Iraq. The Stormtrooper Corps' objective was to liberate the westerly edge of the Kuwaiti capital, to stop any counterattack by Saddam's elite Republican Guard division. We only met sporadic and small arms fire before reaching the suburbs of Al-Jarrah. They occupied several villages and waited for further orders. Unknown to the Imperials, the Republican Guard would never face them in battle, as the majority of the Iraqi divisions had fled or surrendered. The war was over for the Imperials quicker than it had started. The Stormtrooper Corps was called back home on the 1st of March 1991. They would never gain any deposits of fuel as they had hoped. It is suspected that for this reason, they did not continue communications with the United Nations, and would never again help them with military support. Why did Naboo leave the EU? The event that shook the political world in 22 BBY was why Naboo left the European Union. This was commonly known as Nabexit, ever since their victory over the Trade Federation's droid armies many years ago. The Naboo thought of themselves as much more important than they really were. The vote was put to a referendum by Governor C.O. Bibble, and was promoted using a bright red Naboo cruiser. The campaign was spurred on by the Naboo's prejudice for other galactic citizens. It was clear from the outset that the Gungans in the north strongly opposed the idea. When the votes were counted, it showed 52% of the population support leaving the EU, winning by only a small majority. On the 31st of January 18 BBY, Naboo officially left the European Union. They were later fully subjugated by the Empire for clearly being too stupid.